Bullshit.
Pretend for a moment we've entered a parallel universe, free of bullshit and full of bold solutions. That's what the No BS Show is all about. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Amy Bradley, Director of Marketing Communications at Conemaugh Health System. But first, let's cut the bullshit. Tell the truth. Do you use emojis at work? Most of you should have answered that with that thumbs up symbol. 76% of American workers admit to using emojis in professional communication, according to a research study by mobile messaging company Kotap. Just about everyone, 92%, said they use emojis in personal communication. Wow. The emoji has come a long way. Cue that Talking Heads song, Well, How Did I Get Here? The story goes like this. In 1963, the State Life Assurance Company of Massachusetts and Ohio's Guarantee Mutual Company merged, creating anxiety among employees. Management hired advertising expert Harvey Ball to improve company morale. He doodled a smiling yellow face as part of the company's friendship campaign that included 100 smiley face pins for employees. Ball created one of the most iconic images of all time in just 10 minutes. Unfortunately, he didn't trademark it and only made $45 for it. The smiley face became a hipster symbol in the 1960s and 70s before the first digital incarnation at Carnegie Mellon University here in Pittsburgh in 1982. Professor Scott Fahlman typed the smiley face on a university bulletin board to distinguish serious posts from jokes. 15 years later, a designer for a Japanese telecom carrier devised a character set to bring emotional clarity to text messages. But the movement didn't hit a full force until Apple introduced the iPhone in Japan in 2008, and users demanded a way to use emoji. I have no idea how you even say it. Unicode, the computer industry's standard for characters, recognized emoji, and the characters became featured on devices throughout the world. Emojis are showing up even in marketing campaigns now. You can order a pizza from Domino's by tweeting the slice of pizza image. Taco Bell campaigns feature taco emojis that customers can blend with other emoji, tomato, tomato. Anheuser-Busch, Coca-Cola, Starbucks, and Disney paid Twitter more than $1 million for emoji-related ad campaigns tied to the Super Bowl, and IHOP redesigned its logo in the style of emojis. Like any communication medium, emojis have drawbacks and limitations. Unclear intentions. Does that one face with the sweat, does that mean crying or sweating? Ambiguity, that one that's like the clenched teeth, is that a grimace or a smile? Confusion, is the X-side thing a yawn or a complaint? But emojis work, and they're not going away anytime soon. And believe me, Amy Bradley's going to answer all those questions for us. Here are 6 reasons why they're not going away. Number 1, visual power. Emojis are visually memorable. Number 2, simplicity, quick and easy to use. Number 3, emotional impact. They convey emotion more than text-only messages. Number 4, broad and targeted reach. Just about everyone uses them, particularly the coveted millennial target market. 5, kinder negativity, Suzanne. Emojis soften criticism. Suzanne has used those to criticize me. 6, science. Scientists discovered that when we look at a smiley face online, the same parts of the brain are activated as if we looked at a real human face. That being said, a face-to-face conversation is still the ideal communication approach. Stringing together a couple of coherent sentences in an email isn't so bad either. Cool. Our guest today is Amy Bradley, Director of Marketing Communications at Conemaugh Health System and an adjunct professor of public relations for the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown. She brings a diverse background of the on-air expertise plus the corporate side. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
What do you think about that rant, the cut the bullshit rant about emojis?
I think it was meant for me because I like them. So I do think they add something, especially like you were saying, to take away the negativity. So you don't want somebody to think you're mad, so you just put the little smiley face. But I do wonder, I sent one the other day to our CMO and afterwards thought, probably didn't need to include, it wasn't really an emoji, it was just the little symbol for a smiley face. Probably could have stopped there.
But you're passionate about them. You know them.
I wouldn't say I'm passionate about them.
So what are these? Let's go back to these ones that I was saying here. Okay. So here.
Yeah.
So is this one with that tear up above the forehead? Is that sweating?
I'm going to have
crying?
to go with sweating.
That's sweating.
I think crying, it would be coming
What's the
out
grimace
of the eye.
clenched? What's the
That's
clenched?
a grimace.
That's a grimace?
Yeah.
Okay. What about this one?
I thought that meant like you were dead. I'm dead. It's just been a rough day. count me out kind of thing.
Okay. See, look,
like
folks.
Its eyes are X'd out.
Yeah. Well, these will be on the show notes. Amy Bradley, Director of Emoji Communication for Conwell Health System. So you use them in the professional setting?
Not really. Occasionally, but slips in. But I do like them. And my daughter and I have actually moved on to like full character emojis. I don't think they're called emojis, but you create them to look like you, and they're a riot. And you can send them for all different types of situations. I do not use those professionally, but
you're gonna have to we're gonna have to put one on the show notes.
I have one. It looks just like me.
Do you have WJAC-TV, Amy? Is that how you look?
Pretty much, yeah. Let's go back a few years.
So, Amy, let's start off with that. Let's talk about even before that. I'd like to start off with everybody's career path, their journey. Start off with where you went to school and then move into first job, because we found that a lot of times that first job means a lot to many of our guests and help with their career. Sure.
So I was kind of a rare bird in that I knew I wanted to go into broadcast journalism even in high school. So I actually worked at a radio station. So I went to Penn State and I got a broadcast journalism degree. It was a great program. My first job out of Penn State was waitressing at Chi-Chi's because it was very hard to get on air. I was a terrible waitress. Math wasn't my strong suit, so tips at the end of the night, I ended up paying back most of my tip money. But did that for, literally a month or two. And then my first job was actually in radio in Sunbury, Pennsylvania, which for a young lady who was very close to her parents, it seemed like it might as well have been in California.
Where is Sunbury?
It's in Northumberland County, so kind of like in the middle.
Northumberland doesn't help me.
By where the Little League World Series is held.
Williamsport.
By Williamsport, okay. Yeah. So, and it's a great community. So it's like Northumberland County, Union County, Snyder County, I think.
What were the fun things you did when you were living in Sunbury? I
bought a cat, and I worked 10 days in a row. So I had 10 days on and 4 days off, and I would always go home to Pittsburgh. But the good thing about it, I was very homesick, and there wasn't a lot to do because I worked really long hours. So other than my cat, and I had a tiny, tiny apartment. But the great thing was I was anchoring, it was radio, I was anchoring every hour on the hour, both the AM and the FM. So it forced me to be on air every hour. I think I worked like 10 or 12-hour days for 10 days in a row. So my broadcasting skills got much better, my voice got better, and my writing got better because I had to change up the newscast every hour. So, and I was totally responsible for producing it and pulling the information and writing the stories. So it was a great first job. Is it what I wanted to do? No, I think I made, I don't know, like $11,000 a year. I'm not even sure how I survived other than my parents, but it was a great first job for that reason. So I did that for about probably 9 months. And
so
then
10 days in a row forces you to get better
10 days in a row,
quick.
12-hour days, 2 newscasts an hour. That's a lot of writing and a lot of reporting and on-air work.
Yes.
And it was great for that. I really do think that made a big difference.
Hone the skills quickly. Okay. Yeah.
Then I went from there to WRSC in State College. So I went back to State College, a little more to do there, social life-wise, because I had gone to school there. So that was fun. Did that for probably a year, and then started freelancing in television for WJAC, had a Center County bureau. And, that kind of led pretty quickly to the 11 o'clock anchor position in Johnstown. And then eventually 6 and 11.
And that's where you became famous.
Yeah, that's
the anchor
right.
position in Johnstown.
Yeah,
So folks, if you grew up in Johnstown, Altoona, Cambria, Blair, Bedford, Somerset counties from about, 91?
Yeah, 92.
92 to about 98, 2000.
Yeah.
Okay. So Amy Bradley was she always jokes that you had a certain target market. They're the Rotarians.
I have a big following. Yeah. But Johnstown was awesome because my father grew up in Johnstown, so I didn't have any family left there, but I had visited it a lot as a child. And it really is such a friendly community. And I mean, honestly, that's, why I'm still there. I didn't really anticipate staying there this long, but it definitely became home, and it's been great.
In the 70s and 80s, that was their slogan, Johnstown, the friendly city.
Mm-hmm. So I really think that. I really think
that was the
true.
slogan. It was the slogan. Yes. She was joking about saying she had a big following because she jokes about they were the older audience, but she truly was a celebrity because at that time Johnstown was much bigger, much more population. It's declined so much in the last 20 years, and you had a young person that was involved in the community, so you were really well known.
Yeah, it was a pretty big market. It's an odd market because I think at the time I was on air, it was like the 89th in the country, which is a big market, but it encompasses State College and Altoona and Johnstown, and there's probably 13, 16 counties that are covered by that. So it was a nice gig.
I always tell people that when the radio is a little bit different because it's a little less reach than WJAC was. But when I worked in the radio market there, it was the 94th largest market. And I tell people that's big. There's big. 2,000 markets in the United States, and it was 94th and it had 13 radio stations during the time that I was working there. So, and had its own TV and owned newspaper. So talk a little bit about that being the journalistic standpoint in a community, like that size, that's small but yet still big, still a lot of people.
Well, one of the things when I was at Penn State, I actually did a biojournalism honors program at the National Institutes of Health. So my goal really was to be a healthcare reporter. But then you come out, and even at the 89th largest market in the country, they don't really care if you want to just cover healthcare. So you end up covering fires and car accidents and school board meetings and pig farmer stories. So, I mean, in that sense, it was really fun because every day was different. It seems like every day I wore a suit and high heels, like something horrible would happen and I'd be in a field or in a, storm or whatever. And then the days I dressed down like a, president would come to town. So the variety was really neat. And the best part about it was I never wanted just to anchor. I really liked the reporting end because I like to get out and meet people. And it just amazed me that people would invite you in and tell you these personal things and share their stories and introduce you to their family. And there are, to this day, people I run into that say, "Do you remember you came to our house and because my grandfather built this thing and we did a story?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." I mean, it was really a lot of fun.
So two questions. First one is, who's the biggest celebrity or politician you interviewed?
So that one's easy because I was actually still in radio. I was chosen for George Bush Sr.'s press poll. So I got to be the radio reporter for his trip to State College. And it was wonderful because I got to ride with him. Marlon Fitzwater was his. So I got to ride on with his staff and myself, a television reporter. They picked one of every genre and then we had to share our information with all the other stations. So I was there when he met Joe Paterno and met with the football players and I was a big fan. So it was pretty cool. And then that same year, Hillary Clinton, I don't know if it was the same year, but around the same time I met Hillary Clinton was at Penn State.
On the negative side, what was the most biggest crisis type story that you did? You were a reporter on the...
Probably one of the worst was just a big accident in which a lot of people were killed, and that kind of stuff you don't normally see that close up. So that kind of thing was hard in general. And we can talk about why I got out of the news business separately. But one of the reasons I got out, a lot of it was once I had children, but a lot of it was just I didn't want to talk about bad news anymore. And you never knew when you went in what you were going to see and how people's lives were going to be impacted. And that gets old sometimes, that you can't just turn it off. Like now I can come home and if I don't like what's on the news, if it's sad, if it involves children, if it's, too close to home, I can just flip and I don't have to. But when you're reading it every night and you can't get away from it, it can get to you. So
some of our audience will hear this that are from Johnstown because we do have some of a Johnstown contingent with my ties to Johnstown, my brother's ties, and the Johnstown office. But you were known as a trusted journalist, and I think they used to do this simply the best, and they'd always say you were the most trusted person. So talk about that and how that came to be and how maybe it became I guess words to live by, how you make sure you maintain that trust with all that goes on in journalism.
Yeah, I was pretty careful, and I'm sure there were times I wasn't the best reporter for the station because I was not willing to kind of cross the lines and do something that I felt was offensive to somebody, or get, kind of knock on the door. How do you feel that, this happened or whatever? But I made a lot of friendships, and I think the community, I'm outgoing, and I think because I was out there a lot in the communities at meetings and in people's homes, that they really did trust me, and I very much appreciated that and worked hard to make sure that they had a reason to. Mm-hmm. And then, leading into what I do now for the Conemaugh Health System, I've been very fortunate in that I still have that trust. And I think that's one of the reasons Conemaugh brought me on board as a spokesperson. I think the community realizes that I'm not going to give them BS. I'm going to tell them what I can and be honest. And so that's something that I think is important to me and something I try to protect.
So what's a couple of things that you can tell about TV to the average person who we watch the news, and whether it's you or Peggy Finnegan or whomever, we don't know any of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. What are a couple of funny stories or things that the audience...
It's probably changed a bit since I've been out of it 16 years now, but so I think things that always surprised people were, one, that we write our own stuff. I think people think you sit there and they do your hair and makeup and then they hand you a script and you read it. And that was not the case. I love to write. And so, again, for me, that was a fun part of the job. And I was lucky to work with Marty Radovanik and Jen Johnson and different folks. And they're all very talented writers. And we have great, talented photographers as well. So I think that's one thing. We did our own hair and makeup, but people thought there was a staff there for that. My funniest, it's not that funny, but my very first live shot. So I was 22 years old, and it was at a blood donor days, and they're literally in my ear saying, "Okay, we're on in 5, 4," and this little crowd had gathered to watch me do my live shot, and one of the people had just given blood. Well, he threw up all over and then passed out, like literally as they're like 2, 1, and then I turned like just white as a ghost, and the producer's going, "Breathe, breathe, breathe," and meantime there's like dragging this poor kid off, and it was awful. So, but I made it through. That was my first live shot. Very first one. Yeah. I actually did not decide to on my own. Pat Kane, who was the marketing director at Conemaugh Health System, his sons played hockey for my husband, who coaches for Bishop McCourt. And he just one day said, "Hey, did you ever think about getting into public relations?" And I said, "No, I've never thought about it." And he said, "Well, I think Conemaugh could use someone like you to be the spokesperson and to write press releases and handle media relations." And I have to say, I think it's one of the bravest decisions I ever made, because I had a cool gig. I was the 6 and 11 o'clock anchor. I knew that if I even got a word out there that I was thinking about leaving, there'd be 500 people who would want my job and be sending tapes. But I thought there's something to be said for normalcy, for more regular hours. At the time I had 2 children, like my daughter was probably 2 and my son was a baby, and I was working 6 and 11, and that's a hard schedule. And I knew that by the time they got to be school age, I'd be going into work right as they were coming home from school, because I went in at 3 o'clock. And I just thought, how's that going to work? And then that combined with the bad news. And the other thing that kind of got to me after a little while was, you're always covering things. You're never invited. You're never there as a guest. You're never sitting at a table and eating dinner. You're there as the MC or with a camera crew. And I just thought it might be nice to go and be a guest and participate in some of these things rather than covering them all the time. And the other thing that made it really attractive was that Conemaugh was interested in me producing and hosting a half-hour health TV show, which was neat, because I didn't have to give up the on-camera And so we were able to, when I came on board with Conemaugh, that was one of the first things we did was start a half hour. It was called the Conemaugh Connection. I was nominated for 4 Emmy Awards through it. So things I didn't even get to do in TV, I got to do, and it kind of took me back to being a healthcare reporter. And I was telling all good news. I mean, all of my stories through the health system were about people that had been treated successfully and new programs and new technology and great doctors. And so it was really neat.
We're with Amy Bradley, Director of Marketing Communications at Conemaugh Health System, walking us through her career path at WJAC-TV and then moving on to Conemaugh Health System. One more quick question before we go into some of the BS stuff is the first day, week, month, 3 months, 6 months in corporate America. Talk about that transition from being in the media and the fast pace, and it's a perishable product. If you aren't ready, you're screwed. And then when you get into corporate America, if you're ready, it doesn't matter. We're going to go to 6 more meetings.
Yeah. The first thing was I did not have enough to keep me busy. And I think now I long for those days. Like I could work 24/7, and because I do more now, I do marketing and with social media, everything's changed as it was. But at the time, I was just writing press releases, and it was such a slow pace. They would say, oh, this is urgent. And for me in the news business, that means it's going to be on the air in 20 seconds. In corporate America, that meant like, we need this by February. Like the timelines were so different. And it just, I couldn't get used to that. So I was a little bit bored at first. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing. The other thing that it took me a little while to get used to was, when I first started writing press releases, Pat would say to me, I'd say, well, I need to talk to Dr. Saluzzo, our, CEO for this. He'd go, well, no, just make up the quote and, run it by him. And I was like, what? Like,
my brother does that too.
I don't do that.
It freaks my brother out.
Yeah, it does. It's when you're used to like all these journalism ethics and reporting exactly what someone says, I'm like, I can't just make up what he says. Well, now, you get to know your leaders and their style. And of course you run things by them to make sure they're okay. But
yes,
that's kind of how it works. So that was a little bit different too.
What's an example that you've seen of BS in the workplace? And it could be a vendor, it could be a process, it could be a corporate culture, something where you just went, man, that's BS.
I think I'd go back to TV and just say, I think it's getting better, but there is definitely still a stereotype for how you look being on TV if you're a woman, and I don't think it's there for men. And there were days, as trustworthy and great a reporter as I was, if my hair was out of place, people would call and go, oh, wait, what's up with your hair? I wore glasses one night on the air. People were flooding the phone lines, like, why does Amy have glasses on? She doesn't wear glasses. I mean, and I'm like, beautiful. People, just pay attention. I'm talking about the news. Like, who cares if I have glasses on? So I do think there's that, still unfortunate kind of superficial. I do think it's getting better. I do think it's different for women than men. And my daughter's in journalism school now, and it is part of it still. How you look, and I always joke that I could go on and say the world was ending, but if my hair was out of place, that's like everyone would be like, wow, her hair is out of place. So, so there's that. I think that's BS.
Mm-hmm. And they don't do that to guys, huh?
I don't think so. I had one woman Mrs. Parley. I still know her after all these years. May she rest in peace. But she used to call me every time I wore orange. I had one orange jacket. It did not make the rotation, but maybe twice a year. But I can't remember though if she liked it or disliked it. But every time I wore orange, I would get a call from Romaine Parley. And those are just the kind of things that kind of funny. So the one time there were tornadoes coming through, and one had actually touched down in, I can't remember. It was in Bedford County, and it had really impacted, but there were more coming through. And at the time I was 9 months pregnant with Lily. I was huge. And I said, I just can't sit here anymore. My back hurts so bad. I said, I need to go out. And Marty was like, I don't think that's a good idea. There's a tornado coming. And I said, I just can't sit. I just can't, it just hurts to sit. I need to be up and moving. And, so I did a live shot, and literally, like, at one point we thought the tornado was coming, and we decided there was no way I was going to fit under the live truck. I was just going to blow away, but it didn't, obviously didn't hit. But the calls started coming in and the hate mail to poor Marty was not his decision. It was mine. And I begged him to let me go out and cover the, just
and they were mad at him.
Oh, they were so
How
mad
dare
at
he
him.
send Amy Bradley out pregnant?
How dare he send Amy out? And he'll tell you about it. He brings it up almost every time I see him.
Amy Bradley, the Director of Marketing Communications for Commonwealth Health System and formerly the news anchor for WJAC-TV. So, Amy, when did you have an instance where you had a learning experience when maybe you were the BSer and you had something happen where you realized, wow, I'm the problem here, and you fixed it, and what'd you learn from it?
I think for me, the biggest thing there was my personality type is that I like everyone to be happy, and so on a disc, I'm an S. So I think my biggest challenge was learning to be responsible, to bring data to back things up, and not just to feel, I feel this way or I think this, but to actually, I had to learn to bring data and to be able to back up. And I think marketing's changed a lot in that we used to say, oh, here's a campaign and I think this is going to work well. And now we don't. We focus group, we tie it back to return on investment. So that I think continues to evolve in the field. But for me, I was not doing that. It was BS. I was, like, oh, I think this will be great. And you need to learn to say, okay, well, how do you know? How are you going to improve it? Why should we spend the money on this?
Exactly. We talk about marketing as clearly defining your target markets, doing the necessary marketing intel to find out what they want, think, feel, develop it if you don't already have it. So sometimes we come back after the marketing intel and tell clients they have to change their product or service slightly. And then once you've developed it and can give it to them when and where they want it at a price they're willing to pay, then you tell them about it again and again. But what you were sort of referring to there is in the old days, or even today, still the vast majority of people think that what we do is the telling them about it again and again.
Yeah. And they think it's so easy.
Yes.
For every doctor that's told me what should be on the billboard, thank you. I'm going to come do surgery now.
Exactly. When Donald Trump used to do the Apprentice show, they would always bring in an ad agency and help with the two teams. And they made it like you could do this campaign in a week while you were on the show with a bunch of novices. But they didn't say that, they're bringing the equivalent of Mass Solutions for each firm, each of the two teams on Apprentice. But everybody thinks they can do it because they think it's that telling them about it again and again. Right.
And it's a science, and it's math. It's return on investment. It's formulas. And even when I took in grad school, my first class was marketing. I thought, this is going to be a piece of cake. This is what I do. We're going to talk about billboards and newspaper ads. And I went in and I was late because I couldn't find the classroom. So I was kind of sweaty already. And then I get in there, and this teacher that had this problem on the board that went the whole way across the board. It was like algebra hell. And I turned to the guy next to me and I go, I'm supposed to be in marketing. He goes, yeah, this is marketing. Well, I almost threw up on the floor. I was like, I'm never, ever going to make it through. And it was my hardest grad school class because I was just as bad as everyone else. I think of it as one way, and I have since learned that there's so much more to it.
So talk about that. What's your biggest messaging success, the biggest marketing campaign you've done?
An interesting one, we got robotic assisted surgery a couple years back, and such cool technology, and we spent a lot of money on it. And for some specialties like urology, these docs coming out of school have trained on this. So you're not going to be able to recruit a urologist if you don't have this equipment. So great, we have this equipment. It's really neat. Let's tell people about it. Stuff just not working, and so we focus grouped. And here, people, once you start talking to them, were afraid that a robot was gonna come into the room, and they'd ask questions like, "Well, what if the lights? What if the electricity goes down and the robot just starts cutting?" They didn't understand that it's tied, precisely to the surgeon's hands, and that it won't cut on its own without the surgeon. That it's just another tool for a very talented surgeon. So once we were able to understand what people were afraid of, we did Q&A ads with the docs, and the question, will the robot operate on me? And the doctor answers, no, it's always me in control, and this is how it works. And so I think for me, that's that's when I teach. That's one of the understanding your audience and what they're worried about, what they're thinking about. That's for me always an example that comes to mind.
And that's the marketing intel working there, going out and doing the focus groups to find out what they want and what they're thinking. Amy, how can listeners contact you if they'd like to learn more about what you do?
So I'm at the Conemaugh Health System. My email is abradle, the Y doesn't fit, ABRADLE @conemaugh.org.
Okay. Amy, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us for the No Bullshit Marketing Podcast. Visit boldsolutions.nobs.com for show notes plus additional marketing and messaging resources. Sign up for light reading. You'll receive valuable strategies every other week to improve your marketing and transform your message. Visit masssolutions.biz. Lastly, remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions.